If you're ready to feel like your best self, you have some room for improvement in your health, or you're looking to explore the infinite possibilities within wellness, then welcome to the Empire Wellness Podcast. Listen in to your host and renowned wellness expert, Sharleen Lawrence, as she shows you how to build your internal and external wellness empire. Sharleen is a licensed acupuncturist, certified hypnotherapist, and master of traditional Chinese medicine. She'll introduce you to the solutions that have yet to be on your radar. Now here's your host, Sharleen Lawrence.
Welcome back, Wellness Warriors. I'm Sharleen Lawrence, your wellness expert. I am the Chief Executive Acupuncturist at Empire Wellness Center, and I'm the founder of the Hypnopuncture method, combining the powerful tool of hypnosis with the amazing healing power of acupuncture. I am so grateful to have you on this journey with me to explore the infinite possibilities within wellness. It is my mission to educate so you can improve, and together we can empower, inspire, and grow. Let's dive right in.
Hi. Hi, Sharleen. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks, Cindy.
Awesome. Well, I'm happy to have you here, and I'm excited for all the good stuff we're going to talk about today. So, I am curious. I'm going to turn it around to you, and I want to know, what does wellness mean to you?
It's funny, I ask these questions of my guests, and I'm totally unprepared to answer it. I don't know if you know, Cindy, and maybe some of my audience, but early on, I think at the end of season 1, I did this just myself alone, a solo episode where I kind of answered these questions. So I'm really curious to go back and compare what I say now to what I said years ago. So, wellness. I mean, it's really finding that harmony. Like, I really love the word harmony over the word balance, because when it comes to balance, our mind is seeking kind of that, like, a 50-50 equal balance. Whereas with harmony, sometimes our physical wellness might be having to take a little extra, um, feeding the mental wellness a little bit more, spiritual. So taking all of those aspects into consideration, kind of the mind, body, spirit aspect, and those 3 pieces not necessarily having an equal 1/3, but sometimes we need to give a little bit more, like 40% to the mental health, and then that's going to come from somewhere else. So just keeping that harmony and that flow within the physical body, the mental mind, as well as, this the spirituality that a person has, and like how connected they are to themselves, their intuition, to the higher power that they believe in, to others. It's all encompassing.
Yeah, I love that. I love your take on that, because it's right. If I think of balance, I kind of think of like the justice thing,
Yes. Yep.
right? So it's like something needs to be in balance to come back. And I love your
Yeah.
take on, it's gonna look different. It's not gonna be 1/3 of everything, but it's like a relationship. It's not always
Mhm.
50. Sometimes
Exactly.
you give more, sometimes you need to give less, and they need to give more. So I love
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. I actually use kind of the analogy with my patients often, that people are looking for a work-life balance, which kind of, to the subconscious, indicates like 50-50, work gets 50%, life gets 50%. But
Mm.
as, like, and what you're going through right now, what I'm going through, like, I dedicate a big percentage of my time, my energy, my thought processes to building my practice, to building my online program, which is taking way more than 50% from my life part right now.
Yeah.
And I'm doing that so that in the future, the life can have the majority of the percentage, basically, and then the work part gets a little less.
Yeah.
So, I often utilize it in that way. And you're right with the relationships as well. It's like ever not both partners are always giving 50% because some days you just don't have that 50% to give, and so someone else kind of needs to kick in and take over, and hopefully there's a give and take and there's a harmony between it, over time.
I love that. Yeah, and it's another thing you said. It flows and it ebbs and flows and it's gonna change and it's
Mhm.
gonna look different
Mhm.
here, tomorrow, in the future. And I feel like you could apply that to like every aspect of your life. From like
Mhm.
inside hormones, they go up and down depending on
Mhm.
the day, on everything that's happening. If you look at nature, it's always yin and yang. So I
Yep.
love that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So now to the fun part. If you could talk to us about your wellness journey.
Yeah, I kind of want to keep it really to one area of my wellness journey because I think, and I feel like all of us out there have so many facets to it, but this is my podcast and I can pop on here and talk about whatever I want whenever I want. So I really want to keep mine more to the women's health, like menstrual health area, because that has been a huge part of my wellness journey. And I know this is your wheelhouse and it's
Mhm.
similar to what you've experienced. And like you shared your story on a previous episode where you were a teenager, you were having horrible period pain, and you went to the doctor, and they, as much as you recall, they did some kind of diagnostic type of thing where they possibly did an ultrasound, maybe they checked your hormone levels or whatever, and they ultimately prescribed you birth control. And my experience was very similar, except I never got the diagnostic tools. Like they didn't tell me that I needed an ultrasound. They never did blood work. I probably would have been afraid of it anyway. I still to this day don't love getting blood drawn, and which is I understand is highly ironic because I work with needles. But yeah, yeah, very very different types of needles still. And I remember being 14 and had terrible period pain since I was 12. I remember the day, like I could tell you the exact date of when I started my very first period. And I I spent a couple of years just excruciating pain every month. And I really didn't have like super abnormal bleeding like I know many young girls will have very heavy periods. I didn't experience that side of things. However, I do remember, I think it's when I was 14, I'd had a period for something like 37 days. Like I just kept bleeding and I didn't know that was abnormal. And so I think it was finally my mom who noticed like tampon and pad wrappers just kind of constantly in my trash can. And she would go like empty my trash can. And she was like, "Are you just always using these?" And I said, "Yeah, well, I'm on my period." And I'm thinking, you just, once you get your period, you just have it till you die.
Imagine. Oh my
And she was like, "No, that's not how it works." So we went to the doctor and they asked me a few questions and I did explain, and I'm sure my mom was there and helped explain too because she'd witnessed, the severity of the pain was just off the charts, and my body still responds in the same way, or it used to very recently anyway. But the doctor's solution was to start me on birth control pill. But I remember times, and like my mom would tell you this too. I even remember, I think I was 15. I have many sisters, many older sisters. I'm the youngest, and so one of my sisters who's close to, I think she's 9 years older than me, she was getting married soon, and it was her bridal shower. and I was invited, and I just happened to start my period that day. And I was, I don't even know if I took medication for it, or I think I had tried Midol in the past and it never did anything for me. But I was curled up in the fetal position, laying on the linoleum floor next to the toilet. And this served me in a few ways, like the fetal position, trying to like get that pressure on my lower abdomen, on my tummy to try to make the pain go away. The cold floor felt good because I was having, hot flashes basically, and the pain becomes so intense that I vomit. And at that time, I just knew if I could just deal with the pain until I puked, the pain would go away. As I've gotten older, unfortunately, that doesn't solve the problem anymore. I just get intense pain, I vomit, and then the pain continues. And I remember being able to make it to my sister's bridal shower later that day, and I was so wiped out. I was just exhausted. I was 15 years old. Like, this is somebody who should have just off the charts energy, but I was so exhausted from having spent hours dealing with the pain. I did finally learn that like a heating pad would help if I could get a heating pad on there, which, knowing what we know about Chinese medicine, just means there's cold in the uterus, which makes the blood stop moving and the chi and the energy stop moving. And so when you put the heat on there, that helps remove the cold, it helps make everything flow again. And it was just that way month after month. And I, in middle school, going to the nurse's office every month. And I remember one time the nurse, she's like, "Well, just lay there on, their little beds, that they had there." And she goes, "Just put a pillow over your tummy." And I think back and I'm like, you don't understand like the level of pain that
No.
somebody experiences. Like,
Mhm.
who out there has cramps that are so mild that if you just put a little pressure with a pillow that they'll go away? To me, like, I've always called those baby cramps. If I have cramps and I can get through the day, maybe breathe through a couple of like uncomfortable little cramping spasms, not have to take medication, that is a huge win in my book. And
Yeah.
so doctor after doctor, getting to be 18 and starting to do my annual exam with like a pap smear and stuff like that. Just talking to these primary care doctors, these gynecologists over the years, many of whom were really trying their best and were good, compassionate, kind women. I was always seeing women doctors for that kind of stuff. Just time and time again, they would just speculate and say, "Well, we're pretty sure you have endometriosis." And it's never been confirmed. I've never chosen to do the laparoscopic surgery to explore because I think, and I'm pretty sure I'm right here, but if it is endometriosis, that means the tissue is growing in the wrong part of the uterus. So, most often, the tissue that's supposed to line the inside of the uterus grows on the outside, but it can go anywhere. It can be on the fallopian tubes, on the ovaries, it can even attach to nearby organs.
Right.
And if you put even a small, surgical instrument in there and a camera, that's going to create scar tissue, which is just another place that that endometrial tissue can attach to. And so I've never wanted to go to those links to get a diagnosis because I don't care about the name of the diagnosis. I
Absolutely.
care about the solution for my pain. And something that's happened in more recent years since I've gotten married, is something that I know I've talked a lot with you, Cindy, and I know that you explore a lot in your online members community and with your patients that you treat who have endometriosis, whether confirmed or not. So like me, maybe it's not confirmed, just suspected, or with somebody who does have this confirmed, but I can manage 1, 2, or 3 days of pain every month, and I know I can get through that. I've done it for nearly 30 years now, that I'll survive. I know this too shall pass. But what really impacts my life is it makes sex painful. So, endometriosis, a really common symptom is painful sex.
Mhm.
And it doesn't just impact my life, it impacts my partner's life because he doesn't want to be causing me pain. And
Right.
so when I'm just, trying to like grit through it because it hurts, that doesn't make it fun and pleasurable for him. And like, let's be really candid, sex should be fun, sex should be pleasurable. That's why there are these exquisite pleasures that happen at the end of a sexual encounter, because it needs to be fun so that we will proliferate the species. So we,
Right, right. Who's
you
gonna
know,
want to have it when it's painful?
exactly. And so I've started exploring with my Western medicine doctors kind of what my options would be in, like that's the part that impacts my life the most or
Mhm.
has the biggest impact. And so I have talked to a couple of doctors. One of them, the one I talked to most recently, he did spend a good amount of time with me and he was billing my insurance. So
Mm.
I do really appreciate that he took probably a solid 45 minutes out of his day to consult with me and answer my questions. And I flat out told him, I walked in there and I said, I'm not doing any kind of hormone therapy. So I'm not doing birth control or anything like an IUD or anything like that that comes with hormones. And so let's explore other options. And the only thing he could offer me that would help remove the period pain as well as the painful sex was to do a hysterectomy.
Oh,
And
yeah,
I don't want to go to those lakes. And
right.
there are reasons for it. I said I have many siblings, many sisters, and almost every single one of them has had a hysterectomy. A couple of them due to endometriosis. And I think I'm the only one of my sisters who has my uterus still.
Mm.
And I just I want to keep it. I want to keep all my organs. I want to keep my gallbladder. I want to keep my thyroid. Like I want them all.
Yeah. And that's so a common suggestion. Like I
Mhm,
was offered the same thing, but they're like, well, because your age, then you might want to
mhm,
have kids, but if you don't, like, take your uterus out and take everything out. And it's there for a reason and it serves a
mhm,
reason. And even like I've met women, even with hysterectomies, they either feel the same or worse after.
mhm,
Like all
mhm,
these surgeries, even with and laparoscopies, I keep butchering that word, but the surgeries to take out the endo,
mhm,
it doesn't help. And it, like you said before, if you go in there, you're creating scar tissue. And we
mhm,
know with the endometrial cells that causes the endometriosis, if they migrate out of
mhm,
the uterine lining, it's gonna start to attack wherever it falls. That's why with like C-sections, some women get endometriosis on their C-section scars
mhm.
because
Yep.
of the coming through and then the endometrial cells coming in there. Or let's say you go for surgery for your appendix and there's menstrual blood backflowing into your peritoneal cavity, and they're cutting in there, and those cells get into other tissues. Now you
Hmm.
have endometriosis spreading. So I hear you on the not getting the hysterectomy. I feel like not
Yeah,
to,
and
yeah,
you know, everybody gets to make their own choice, and I feel like I have better solutions. I know you have better solutions, but people, not everybody knows about these things, and I'm really hoping, I'm really looking forward to sharing the next part of this journey, because it will give so many women hope that if you if you choose to have a hysterectomy, that's your choice. And also, cancer can happen, like, if you have ovarian cancer or cervical cancer or uterine cancer, like, that's when a hysterectomy is going to potentially save your life. And we could really go down the rabbit hole in the whole cancer thing too. And there might be a lot of great solutions that are natural out there. And it's no judgment on what somebody
absolutely.
decides to do with their organs. And absolutely, like, if you're done having kids, if you're never going to have kids and you just want to be done with it, that's fine. Just know that you might have a different bear to deal with when
Yeah,
your hormones change and shift.
important part of education and being able to be informed to make your own medical decisions, which I feel like our programs are great for that because it gives
Hmm.
our members, our patients, the power of their own health.
Yes, absolutely. And that's where I feel so fortunate that I can walk in to the gynecologist's office and say, these are the things I'm not willing to do. What other solutions do you have? And the answer was, you know, not a solution I'm aiming for, then okay, I will. That, for me, it's kind of what I needed to hear to give myself a kick in the butt to do what needs to get done. Like, and I'll preface this with a lot of the work that you do with your patients, the work that I do with mine, the work that I've done on myself. It's very simple, but that doesn't mean it's easy. There's, you
Right.
know, we have to be diligent, disciplined. Like,
Mm.
I've had to learn discipline on a whole other level to get to where I am now. And I want to go back just over the last couple of years, because I've been dealing with this. I'm 41 now. I've been dealing with this since I was 12. Excruciating pain, like I described. I would throw up and pain would go away, which is so funny because this is such a Chinese medicine concept of like the wood energy attacking the earth energy. And so, if you're curious and have no idea what that means, reach out to Cindy or myself and we can teach you some of that cool stuff like we teach in our programs. But it's progressed to a point where, even several years back, I had a couple of miscarriages when my husband and I were trying to have kids. And I am sure that a big part of it plays into the fact that my uterus just doesn't build tissue in the proper way, that I just couldn't have a like thriving place for the baby to hang on to and grow and thrive. And so I think the endometriosis or assumed endometriosis was a factor in me losing those pregnancies. But even since then, since losing those pregnancies, so probably in the last 7, 8 years, my period pain, and I've been off of birth control for 10 or so years now. I'm actually allergic to it. The last time I tried, I developed head to toe hives. And so I'm like, I just won't do hormone replacement of any kind anymore. Yeah, that was miserable, pretty uncomfortable. But in these last 7 or 8 years since my miscarriages, my periods have gotten worse. The pain has gotten worse. Still don't have really severe heavy bleeding, although, as I get into my 40s, I do have a little bit heavier, but it's really just kind of a single day. I would consider it normal heavy, not needing to really double up on a tampon or a pad. But the pain is no longer a part of a day or one day, it's sometimes 3 days. And the pain will not completely go away with medication to the point where I'm taking prescription strength, like 800 milligrams of ibuprofen, which you're supposed to do once a day. I do 3 times a day, about every 8 hours. The effects only last about 6 hours, and I kind of push myself to wait. So I was taking 2,400 milligrams of ibuprofen per day, sometimes for 3 consecutive days.
Wow.
And even the pain that I could feel when I had my miscarriages, I actually learned that my cramps, what I call like my period cramps, are uterine contractions. Who knew? That's what's happening. Because in losing those pregnancies, my uterus was contracting, trying to expel the baby. And it was basically my cramps just on another level. So it was like 10 out of 10 pain, and then it would maybe go to an 8 out of 10, and then it would cramp again to a 10. Whereas when I have my regular period cramps, it'll be like an 8, and then maybe a 3, and then it'll go back to an 8 as that contraction happens. But I can even feel the the tissue, and this is again just an assumption that it's endometriosis, but I can feel that the tissue has built up between my uterus and my bowels, as well as my uterus and my bladder, because trying to go to the bathroom while I have cramps is excruciating. It's like just to evacuate my bladder, if a cramp, like if a uterine contraction is happening while I'm trying to pee, it's like being stabbed in
Yep.
the stomach. It's awful. And, that's just another part that, like, there aren't great Western medicine solutions out there, but to be able to have a normal bodily function is just so miserable. And that's been going on these last few years. And I've talked to a lot of people with endometriosis, even one of my sisters who she had it very severe. She did have a hysterectomy, and her world is so much better in many ways after the hysterectomy. But I've talked to her at length that I'm like, did it hurt to go pee? And she says, yep, she could absolutely feel it, impacting her bladder and her bowels kind of in the same way. So it's not just me.
No, it's not just you. And I just want to say I'm sorry that you had to go through those miscarriages. That is not easy, not an easy thing to go through. And yeah, that's another thing that it affects the bowels, it affects the bladder right outside of the uterus. It builds up, and like simple things like you said are so painful. I've experienced that too. Like just trying to do number two or number one, it's like what is going on? And then you might feel better after, or it might still have that lingering pain or that tenderness. And I also wanted to ask you, just going back to the painful intercourse, when you are having intercourse, it's painful. Do you also have the experience of like after you still feel cramped or like bruised,
Mm.
or is it just during the intercourse?
So there'll be a short period of time after, yeah, that it's still painful, like really getting intimate here. So afterwards, like getting up, going to use the toilet, because ladies, if you are not going pee after sex and you get UTIs, you need to go pee after sex.
Yes, please.
There's a shoving of bacteria in that area. Yeah, so during that like little window of time there is still some discomfort, and the same with, kind of like the cramps and trying to go pee. It's like trying to kind of initiate that stream is uncomfortable. It's funny, like you asked that, and I've never, it's probably just been how I am that I've never thought, but it is. Yeah, it's painful for that short time. I think until maybe like the muscles in the vaginal wall can kind of start to relax again. But fortunately, that like bruising pain or that kind of sharp pain that I experienced during intercourse, it's gone shortly after. So
Yeah,
mine does not linger.
gotcha. And I'm asking because I've had the same experience of during and then afterwards I'll feel like a cramping, like a dull cramping, and it stays there
Mhm.
for a little bit and then it goes away. And also, have you tried different positions? Because I know one of the things they tell you is like, well, don't do deep penetration. Was like sometimes you don't have to go that deep, you
Yeah,
know? So like
yeah.
what yeah.
I definitely, there are like the certain positions that cause more discomfort, and so I avoid that as much as I can. And yeah, definitely played around with, trying all the things. Yeah.
Creative,
Yes, yeah.
which could be fun, I guess, but I mean, not because you have to, right? And then also, we like you mentioned, you you want to have sex, you want to enjoy it. So, but you also want your partner to enjoy it, and there's that feeling of like, well, dang, like here we go again complaining about my pain. Like, he's gonna not get fed up, but like also kind of ruining his experience.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, I'll just kind of take it and it'll be over soon. And it's such a shitty thing to go through because one, you
Yeah.
want to enjoy it. One is intimate. You want to be intimate with your partner. You want that's part of your connection and your relationship, right?
Mhm.
And you just have to kind of like, okay, just bear it, and that's not fair for either one of you. So what is his take on it? I feel like what you said, he's very supportive. And what would you say if men were listening?
Mm.
What would you say to them? Like if we were to bring them into this conversation?
I love your line of questioning. You're so good at this. Okay, so my my husband's fully aware of the situation, and I've also come to learn over the years there are certain things that will maybe inflame me more. I really consider all of this inflammation, and I'm sure shortly we'll kind of get into your processes of working with your patients, how I've done similar processes with myself. But if I eat certain things or if I drink alcohol, I tend to be more inflamed and then the pain will be worse. Obviously, certain positions, but for him, I mean, he hates hurting me, and he's said that time and time again. Like, he just, he feels so bad that he's causing me pain, and it's really not him that's the cause. It's the condition, it's the inflammation that's going on. But there are plenty of times where I just try to, like, suck it up and bear it, and my husband has come to learn to, like, watch my facial cues.
Oh,
And, for anybody who watches me on video, if you're listening on audio and you've never seen me speak, I have a very expressive face, and I'm very bad at hiding my
yeah.
emotions or my surprise or anything. And so I think I'm doing a good job at, like, keeping a neutral, pain-free face. But apparently I'm not, because, you know, he'll say, he goes, "Oh, I just looked at you and I can see that you're in pain." And so then for him, he's like, "Okay, well, I'll wrap this up fast," or something. And, you know, that's it's really no fun for anyone. So I would say to any men out there who, if you're with a woman or a partner who either has endometriosis, that she knows she has it, or even something like a fibroid or ovarian cysts, PCOS, those types of things, like any of this tissue that isn't normal or healthy, that can cause pain during sex. And so be compassionate and maybe have the conversation. Maybe she's too embarrassed to talk about it or bring it up. So maybe you need to initiate that conversation. But if you do ever notice that perhaps she's uncomfortable or in pain or something like that, know that it's not a negative towards you. It's just how her body is not in harmony right now. And so as she starts to get better and try to solve some of these problems, things will get better. Yeah, just try to pay attention, because as fun as it is for the guys, we want it to be just as fun for the girls.
Exactly. And our bodies also tense up, you know? Anyone in pain is going to
Mhm.
tense up. So that's also
Yeah.
a sign of like, because it's happened to me, I'll be like, like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, 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 it's okay. But if you're in pain, for both of you, like, speak up, you
Yeah.
know, if there's communication, then there's more of a possibility of finding some kind of solution, some kind of compromise, right? Whether it's like, let's
Mhm.
try this, let's try that, you know. And also, like you said, other things can cause an painful intercourse. I've had a patient that she had a cyst, but she had pain during intercourse. So she was so nervous to have sex, and every time she would have sex, she was tense and it would hurt. So I'm
Mhm.
like, is it hurting because you're tensing up or because you still have that cyst, right?
Right.
So the next time, I'm like, try to breathe, try to relax that area, because the more relaxed you are, the better. So
Mhm.
then next time she came in, she's like, yeah, I did what you said and it didn't hurt. So just following up with that is, if you try to relax and also foreplay, you know, warm things up. Women need
Mhm.
that time to get things going. So if you're a guy listening, give enough time for her to get warmed up. Like,
Mhm.
I guess prep her, right? You know, because when you have that foreplay and you have that preparation for penetration, then things are going to help align. You're gonna get more moisture, you're gonna get more wetness. I'm pretty sure things move around in there. Doesn't the
Yeah.
cervix come, right?
I think the cervix comes into a different position when it's ready. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, you get more expansion, you get more blood flow, and all of that is going to help for a better experience for both of you.
Mhm. Yeah, so I wanna tell the kinda latest part. It's not, I was about to say last part, it's not the last part of my wellness journey, but it's the latest part of my wellness journey, and that it's really, I mean, just the last couple of months. And so I know, Cindy, your process with your patients and your online members has a lot to do with this four-stage process, where stage one, we're really focusing on the immune response and decreasing inflammation. Stage
Mhm.
two is digestive. Stage three, we would call neuroadrenal. And then stage four is circulation, where when we're talking about endometriosis or any kind of menstrual related health issues, those show up primarily as like stage three and stage four problems. But what you do with your patients, what I do with mine, and what I've done with myself is really go back to that stage one,
Mhm.
reset the immune system, clean up the inflammation, and then move on to stage 2 with digestion, which is really where I'm at right now on kind of my healing process.
Yeah.
And the twice now, I've had 2 consecutive periods where I've had cramps, but the first one, the cramps were tolerable, so that all day long, I was seeing patients all day long. I did not take any medication. I did do a little heat therapy with, like, a heat lamp in my clinic here. On my lunch break, I just put a little bit on my tummy and made it through the whole day without medication. In Before bed on day 1 of that cycle, I was a little bit more intense cramps, and I did decide to take 2 ibuprofen, a very normal 400 milligram dose of ibuprofen to, like, allow me to sleep through the night, which worked.
Huge though, from 800
Um,
to 400. Yeah.
exactly, and I really went from, like, 2,400 to 400, and then the second cycle after that was no medication at all. Mild cramps on day 1, and it all started with cleaning up inflammation,
Mhm.
taking my stage 1 herbs, which help reduce inflammation, and then I think for me, the biggest contributor was probably 4 or 5 months ago now, I did a blood test to identify certain food sensitivities, and some of my favorite things came up. Yeah, my favorite food is chips and salsa, and
Mhm.
corn showed up on mine, so I have eliminated corn. Soy popped for me, so I've eliminated soy. Really, I've eliminated all processed foods because they all contain corn and soy.
Mhm.
And it took a few months to kind of get the ball rolling when it comes to my like period health, but I now have 2 consecutive months of decreased pain, and I attribute the majority of that to cleaning up my diet, which has in itself reduced the inflammation in my body. And I mean, I'm somebody who ate really clean to begin with, and I've dialed it in even more based on the data that came back from my food sensitivity test.
Yeah.
And so I'm about ready to graduate out of stage 2 and go into stage 3, which I know is where so much more of the menstrual health stuff is
Yeah.
going to improve for me. But what's so exciting, and I share this with my patients, I know you share this with yours. So here's a testimony for all of the people that you work with, that things will get better in the earlier stages before we even address them where they show up in stages 3 and stage 4.
Yeah.
So, it's very encouraging that for the first time in, like, nearly 30 years, I'm able to have mild to no pain with my periods. The painful sex has gotten better. It's still there, but it is a lot less frequent and a lot less intense,
Yes.
and there's hope. There is hope.
I love that so much. And it's also, to show, I don't know if we spoke about this in this episode or the previous one, that, you know, things affect other things. So, like, if you clean up your immune system, it's going to show up in other areas of your body and your health. And who would have
Mhm.
thought immunity and menstrual health, right? Like, that is so cool. And also, like, some women, including me, so recently I started getting, when I would get my period, my tonsil will swell up,
Mm.
or I'll have like weird body aches. I'm like, I've heard of this. And it's lurking pathogens. And
Yeah.
someone will have this, and maybe they connect it or they don't, but they're like, well, what can I do? Just let it run its course. So, and that stage process allows for that cleanup, and it
Mhm.
allows a really nice process and transition from stage to stage, and seeing how you're already seeing changes, like great changes, just from doing stage one, stage two, and now that you're moving on, like I am so hopeful for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is so amazing.
Yeah, I'm excited. Like the proof is in the pudding, and I
Mhm.
know in working with my Hashimoto's population, I've seen how this four-stage process works for them, but finally adopting it for myself, and it's encouraging. There's hope.
Yeah.
So, if somebody's been suffering for 5 years, stop. You don't have to suffer for 30 years like I did. We'll get you there.
Yeah, suffering for that long, and now you're like, what is this? That is so cool. I love this story. That is awesome. Is there anything else that you've done aside from like your stages that you kind of modified?
I don't think so. I mean, I constantly do mindset work and breath work and stuff, but that hasn't really changed. So I'm sure that has an impact, and it's just not,
Yeah.
you know,
So you only
part
had
of
to,
what I've changed.
yeah, you only had to do like some modifications because you're already walking the walk pretty much. Yeah,
Yeah.
love that. And also to go back with endometriosis, it's an autoimmune, so it's your immune
Mhm.
system attacking these endometrial cells that are out of place. They're not in your
Mhm.
endometrium, in the lining of your uterus, and
Mhm.
they migrate somewhere else. And your body's like, whether a regular immune system would be like, okay, let's just clean it up, we're not bleeding. Your body attacks it, and then it creates this inflammatory, and with chronic it causes chronic inflammation.
Mhm.
So starting from with stage one is a big deal, because we're thinking, yeah, it's menstruation, it should be all the way at the bottom, but in reality there's an immunity part to it. And I'm sure with not only endometriosis but many other, menstrual health issues, is part of your immune
Mhm.
system not being in balance and not acting as it should, and attacking your
Yeah.
own body. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that's one of those things. I think endo is one of those things that's not 100% agreed upon in the medical community if it's autoimmune or not. But
Hmm.
I look at the body, and I think this is something beautiful about Chinese medicine is, if the terrain is out of balance, out of harmony, that becomes a chronic problem, which pretty much is autoimmune. So just because we don't have a blood marker yet that says, yes, you have this, antibody that's attacking your endometrial tissue, that just means that science hasn't caught up yet, but we can still approach the body as if there is an attack, like a civil war type of attack going on inside. And trust me, when I learned this kind of four-stage process, I thought it was so ridiculous. I'm like, nobody has, these hidden pathogens or whatever, and that there's we're never going to have to deal with stage 1 because the immune stuff, it doesn't matter. Like unless they have Lyme's disease or reactivated Epstein-Barr or something like that.
Something
And
obvious.
exactly. And so I thought, I was like, okay, well, I'll get through stage 1 in like 2 weeks because I don't have any of those issues. And it took me a lot longer to get through because once I started the lifestyle practices, once I started taking the herbs for the immune support and to kind of release some of those hidden pathogens, a bunch of stuff came up. And I was like, oh, I do have a bunch of hidden pathogens. We just kind of like unlocked their door and they've come out of their house.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense that there is absolutely an immune component to it.
It does. And even if it's not like an immune thing that's causing your menstrual issues, we all are exposed to many things. We all go out, talk to
Mhm.
people, we see patients, the weather changes,
Mhm.
things go into your body. Your immune system's constantly fighting something,
Mhm. Yeah.
constantly protecting you. And if, let's say, you have a day where your immune system is not to up to par to fighting what's going in, and the pathogen comes in and is like, oh, this is cozy, I'm gonna just fall asleep here and just stay here, right? So that's a dormant pathogen that's now in your system,
Mhm.
and it's gonna come up and flare up and wake up. So we could clear that out before it causes things, then that's
Mhm.
all, which is
Absolutely.
in our process. So it's really exciting.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Oh, another thing I wanted to mention with like endo and menstrual issues, having sex during your period, if anyone listening is doing that, please stop. This this causes retrograde menstruation, which means that you're pushing the blood from your uterus. It goes up to the fallopian tubes into other areas of your body. Peritoneal cavity could go into, bladder, intestines, digestive issues. And if we could avoid that by just waiting to have sex, that'd be great. And also, if you're having painful menstruation, communicate with your partner. I know it's tough, but it's going to help a lot. It's going to create a stronger bond. And I'm just going to say this, if he's not being respectful to you and he's not being compassionate and understanding, then maybe you need to rethink that, or maybe you need to set boundaries. I don't know what you need to do. Maybe we could talk about it in our programs or reach out to us or
Mhm.
your therapist. I don't know. But that's important. And don't take the pain. I know it's tough because you want to be there for your partner, but if you're having pain and you're just taking it literally, you're going to create more inflammation and it's going to make it worse in the long run. So we could just be like, that's painful. Let's change positions. Let's try something else. You don't have, I mean, intercourse is great, but there's other ways to be intimate. Maybe explore that. I don't know if you have any other things to advise on.
No, those were great tips. I actually didn't know about the retro bleeding,
Retrograde
however
menstruation,
you
yeah.
retrograde menstruation. Yeah, that's very fascinating for somebody who has, like, painful periods, like, sex while having a painful period is kind of the last thing on my mind.
Yeah.
But I know, it's something many couples, like, especially couples who are using, like, natural methods of not getting pregnant, so the, like,
Yeah.
fertility awareness method, it's always on the table that, like, you're not gonna get pregnant on those first 5 days at least, and so keep that in mind. It may not, although, yes, you're not gonna get pregnant, but having sex while you're bleeding is actually not going to be all that great. It can cause harm. Great point about, if there is painful sex going on, then it is just causing more inflammation because, just think of the actual mechanics of it. Something is inflamed and then you're poking around in there and it gets more inflamed and angry. And you make a really important point that, if you're listening to this, especially if you're a woman and you have the conversation with your partner and there is pain and they don't offer empathy or compassion or understanding that, things need to change, then that's a big red flag and a big sign that, they're not considering your needs above their own. And we need to have that good harmony within our partnership, like we talked about right at the start, that, there's a give and take. And so perhaps explore that difficult decision if you would need to keep that relationship going or not. That's a really huge, huge
Yeah,
point right there that, yeah, the understanding needs to be there.
absolutely. All right, great. This has been so fun. Okay, so now we're gonna do the wrap up like you do it. So let's see, I have it right here. Okay, so if you could text one tip to everyone on the planet on how to be well, what would it be?
Like you said, there are so many things, but the thing I'm gonna go with right now is eat real food.
Yes.
If it comes from the earth or an animal, eat it. I like to say shop the perimeter of the grocery store. If it
Yeah,
comes in a package, leave it alone. It's not real food.
absolutely. Love that. Okay. And then what is your favorite book?
As much of a reader as I am, of course, there are many that I could suggest, but I do actually have a favorite. And I call it my favorite because I think I just reread it and I think I've read it 5 times. And it's called Born to Run by Christopher McDougall. It is a nonfiction book about these indigenous people in Mexico. They live in the Copper Canyon of the Barranca Mountains in Mexico. And it's just a beautiful book. I've read it 5 times. I get something different out of it every time. And it's cool. Whether you're a runner or not, it's an awesome book. It talks about nutrition and it's just a cool story. I think the author is an excellent storyteller and he told a really great story.
Love that. I'll have to put that one on my list. Okay. And then for the lightning round, so 4 quick questions, and then first thing that pops into your head. So, what is your favorite food?
Steak.
Steak? That is so funny as former vegan and vegetarians. That's like, give me steak.
Yep, I want the
Yeah,
steak.
it's so good. And you feel so much different.
Hmm.
After eating meat, I felt so much better. And it's
Same.
like I hated it and loved it at the same time. What is your favorite exercise?
Right now, it changes all the time because I love exercise, but I started doing this method. You have to go to a place, but it's called Lagree. It's Lagree, and I know they have centers in different parts of the country, but it is like Pilates on steroids. It's a reformer type machine, and I have never felt so strong in my life. It's awesome. And I'm just dripping sweat by the end of the class. Yeah, it's my favorite right now.
What is that? I haven't heard of that. Okay. What inspires you?
I don't know if this one has changed since the last time I answered these questions. My patients always inspire me. I learn at least as much from them as they do from me, if not more. I love them. I love their perseverance. I love their, just their drive and their desire to be healthy and to change the, world of medicine that we have right now. So many of them are like champions for that. So they inspire me.
That's beautiful. Love that. Okay. What is your biggest indulgence or guilty pleasure?
Ah, right now, because I'm gonna not do a food one because I can't really indulge much on the food side right now. Normally, it would be a food thing, but some kind of like television. I love Grey's Anatomy. I'm like re-going through it. So we'll say Grey's Anatomy.
Anatomy. I could relate to that. Cool. Alrighty. Well, thank you for having me in your podcast and interviewing you. This was very enlightening. And if you wanted any last statements that you have for the audience?
Yeah, I know both of us. I have my program rolling, and then I know Cindy is starting to enroll her beta testers in her program that will be launched soon. And so, for anybody who is dealing with menstrual issues, she has an amazing process for you guys. So, please reach out to Cindy. Go check out her episode where she was the interviewee and get her info on how to connect with her because she has just fantastic solutions for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Whether it's improving your internal, physical, or mental health, we have more tools to explore the infinite possibilities within wellness. Be sure to visit us at empirewellnesscenter.com for more ways to connect with Sharleen. There you'll find ways to educate, improve, empower, inspire, and grow. That's all available on empirewellnesscenter.com.